So once they had gotten everyone out and chopped all the plants up or did what they did they try to reclaim the creek? Did they try to remove the dam and get the water to run back again?
At that time, no. No one was doing it right. And that was exactly, brother, what really, really kind of upset me. And again, we were new at the game. We were the game wardens. Nobody really thought of us as mainline law enforcement or, narcotics task force guys or anything like that at the time. So I wasn't going to make waves. We just wanted to integrate and work together. We wanted to unify these teams. And what I really wanted to do at this point is get back with my command staff and, my bosses and go, hey, we got a big, big problem out there, man. And
right.
There's more of this going on, and we need to be involved, even though it's not traditional, because we're sworn to protect our resources. And, well, besides everything game wardens do that you think of from the wildlife standpoint, we're mainline law enforcement just like every police officer, right? We go through the same training. And then what people don't realize is we go through 2 more months of additional training in a really long academy that's all wildlife specific, wildlife forensics, wildlife ID, weapons identification, all the things you really need to do the game warden side of it with wildlife, in the backcountry, so to speak. But we needed to integrate with other agencies and kind of bring them into our world if we were going to participate. So that one case started the change in me to try to build those relationships and get into tactics and tactical circles with some of these, SWAT and special operations units that would go in and do this job.
Under normal circumstances, if that was just being diverted by a rancher, so if a rancher had done that and the creek was dry, how would you fix that?
We would have got with him, and it's what's called a stream adulteration violation, and it's 1602 in our Fish and Game Code is the section, and it's a very common section because water's diverted for a lot of reasons. And you can divert water with a permit in certain circumstances, but you can't completely denude a creek that has wildlife thriving. That's a waterway of the state for everybody to enjoy, which this one was.
And if normally the case would be that they would have to just have the flow come back to exactly how it was before to remove the dam and...
Yep.
And that would be up to the rancher?
That would be up to the rancher. It would be part of a penalty. It could be a civil, it could be a criminal, it could be a probationary fix it and you're okay.
So there was there's no law involved or nothing in place, rather, to when you found these grow ops, like there was no previous precedent.
Right, exactly. It was completely brand new. And this was, one of the first grows I think that any of us had found throughout the state of California as game wardens. I mean, there were other guys finding some things and working, but being from the Silicon Valley and being inspired by those wildlands to everything I became later and what I stand for, it was home, and it hit home. But seeing that and getting to meet certain guys from the sheriff's department, and my first book goes into this whole learning experience of, ad hoc jumping in with other agencies and doing it.
Was this the Hidden War?
This was the first book, War in the Woods.
War in the Woods.
Yeah,
so you wrote War in the Woods and then Hidden War is the new one?
Yeah, Hidden War is the brand new one that just came out. And they're basically 10 years apart. And the cool part about that, Joe, is when you look at the differences, we do some major comparisons. And what War in the Woods covers is that chapter 1's that first mission I'm telling you about right now, because that was like, bing, here it is.
Right.
We're not in Kansas anymore. So something's crazy.
The people, the higher-ups that were in charge of trying to eradicate the grow op and take the cartel guys down. So that was their job, was just handling that. It was just handling the marijuana aspect of it, right?
Right.
And the armed cartel guys. So there was no one in place that was supposed to take care of the waterway?
There wasn't.
That seems so crazy to me.
It does. It was one of those things that it was based on the fact that a conservation group from an agency like Fish and Wildlife like us, we just weren't involved where we would be looking at those environmental damages, right?
Right.
But from a narcotics officer standpoint, you may see the damages, but it may not register. There might not be a mandate or even objective to clean that stuff up. And back at the time, DEA was funding all of our states and all of our county teams based on the number of marijuana plants we eradicated. So there wasn't any recognition of the environmental damages and any type of funding based on how much reclamation and cleanup you did. Now that would change, fortunately, and we were a big part of making that change, fortunately. And there wasn't a lot of funding or point kickback or value to catching bad guys, to catching some of these guys that were doing the damages. So a lot of teams then were dropping in on helicopter lines, cutting plants, getting a big plant count, getting funded for it, taking the weed out, and that was it.
That's so crazy. Like,
yeah,
I would imagine. I mean, obviously, I don't work in law enforcement, but I would imagine there would be one person who would like detail a plan.
Right.
And I would think that, well, what happened? Well, we found out that this creek was dry.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, we got to resume the creek.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be like part of the plan?
It would. You would think it should be.
Right.
But
so this is all basically new territory.
Completely new.
And so we're only talking about 15 years ago as well, which is really crazy.
Yeah, it was the start of a big shift in my career because I saw this as a big problem. I also, up until in 2005, we were on, one of our first, second, third operation since this one we just mentioned in 2004. And in August 5th of 2005, the game completely changed because that's when we were involved in our first gunfight. And that's when my partner, Warden, who I trained in the academy, we were partners in the squad. I had promoted to be the lieutenant for 2.5 counties, the Silicon Valley, Santa Clara County, Monterey, part of San Benito, 20 days before this incident happened. And I had young wardens that wanted to participate and do some of the stuff I was doing with the other agencies on the marijuana, operational front. And this was, right above the tech capital of the world, right there in Silicon Valley and Los Gatos. We were in really steep, arid country, August, right before the A-Zone deer opener. We were all gearing up for that. And it was 3 game wardens, 3 sheriff's officers, good sheriff's officers that we met on that first operation in 2004 I just gave you the story on. And they were in harvest time. They were fortified. They had heavy weapons like SKSs, the AK-47 derivative, sawed-off shotguns. And they had the grow set up where they were basically defending it. And when we came in, there was an ambush shot from one of the growers, and that was the one shot the bad guys got off. And unfortunately, that's the shot that hit my partner through both legs. And that bullet went through the right thigh and tumbled through his right leg, then kept going through his left. So he's down, and we're trying to keep him from bleeding out of 4 holes for the better part of 3 hours waiting for an air rescue. And we had, nobody in the country from the standpoint of a law enforcement team had ever been counterattacked by these growers. We'd chase them around, they'd run away. Sometimes we'd find weapons. Oftentimes we wouldn't. But so this was just a real eye-opener, like, what the fuck did we just walk into? And plus, my partner was real close to not making it. And fortunately, he did survive, or I don't know that we'd be sitting here telling this story and talking about it. But that day, when I saw how well they were equipped, the type of weaponry they had, and the fact that I almost didn't come home that day, I went, okay, this is super dangerous. We can't do this as standard patrol game wardens. We can't do this doing just the traditional stuff. We should stay involved in it because aside from being so violent, the environmental damages, Joe, were the worst I'd still ever seen, and they just kept getting worse and worse the more operations I'd work in my home county, right? So we learned a lot from that. There were a lot of tactical lessons. There were a lot of team lessons, a lot of things we could have done different. And that kind of changed the game where we eventually got to what we're going to talk about a little bit later.